Hello, and welcome to our inaugural webinar for the Community by Association Network. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. Attendee microphones have been muted during the session, so if you've got any questions for Tirza in the chat window below, you can put them there, and we'll answer them throughout the webinar. And then today's session is also going to be recorded if there's anyone who was not able to attend the live session, and you'll be able to see it on demand. So let's get started. Today's webinar features Community by Association Network member Tirza Austin. Tirza is the Senior Coordinator of Online Community with the American Society of Civil Engineers. And today we'll be talking to her about her journey so far in the online community space. Tirza, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So my background, growing up, my dream was to be a sports writer. And that was my dream. I did quite a bit of journalism in college. Well, before and after college, I was involved in my student newspaper, local newspaper. That was kind of the path that I was going towards. Given the, that was in 2009, I graduated from college. At that point, journalism was kind of a dwindling field. It was one of those things that I decided to leave and not pursue it. I got into bartending and waiting tables and did that for almost 10 years, and decided that I wanted to start pursuing an actual career again. And I found community management, and that's kind of a good mesh of both journalism and then also, customer service and handling members. So really just perfect place for me now is community management.
Awesome. So how did you actually find community management? Is it something, because I personally just kind of fell into it. So how did you find your way to community management? Was it something you were looking for, or?
Not at all. I would say it found me, which I think is the case with most people. So basically it was one of those things where you're just looking for a job, any job, and you're on Indeed and you're sending out resumes, and it was one of those things. I interviewed with ASE for a completely different position, and obviously didn't get that position, but I got a call back and they said, hey, look, we have this opening, we think that your skill set might fit here. And at that point I didn't even know anything about community management. I didn't know it was an actual field. So, it was one of those things that I've joined a bunch of different groups. CMX is the group that I'm a part of, Community by Association. I joined in participating in groups like that has really helped me develop and hone my job.
Awesome. So I'm interested to know what you were thinking when you first started working in community management, because for me, I was like, yeah, I don't know what this is. Sure, let's go for it. And it just surprised me every step along the learning journey. So what was it like for you in those first few months as you were starting your job?
It's funny because, and I think most people kind of have this idea that it's basically just like, I have social media channels, like I can, that's easy. Like I can definitely do social media. Like I have a Facebook, like I can just post and it's fine.
Exactly.
And you don't really that's the mindset. Like, everyone on the street thinks that they could be, social media.
It's true.
So, and that was kind of the basic, mentality that I had. Like, oh, it's, people post and this and that, and easy peasy. But the more you learn about it, the more you realize, how intricate it really is. This is definitely a great learning experience, and I learn every day. Like every day, I find out things that I'm like, oh, this is something that I should be doing. This is something I should be doing. So like, it's really, there's so much to think about.
Yeah, I think I always tell people it's one of those things where you can never stop learning. You learn something new all the time, because it's not the way that you approach, there are some basics to community management, but the way that you approach it in your specific business, you also have to think about what the business outcomes are and how it aligns to the strategy and those types of things. So, it's not just, yeah, I'll moderate and I will, put some content out there and that will be that. There's a whole list of other things you need to be thinking about and skills you need to be considering developing in order to be good at it. So definitely always a learning experience.
Yeah, and I think what you're moderating and what you're monitoring is different depending on the community. So I mean, it's like to even just learn what is your organization's business strategy and what is their focus depends on how you actually moderate and run the community. So it's if I could be successful at one organization monitoring or managing one community, but then if I were to go to say community for photographers, it might be completely different, the skill sets that I develop and I use. So it's interesting to think that's the great thing I think is, it's not a skill set that's, set in stone. I think the skill set is a little bit different depending on each organization you're with.
Exactly. So that's a good segue into really understanding your community. So tell us a little bit about the community that you manage. How many members do you have, and is it something that's open? Is it closed? Tell us about it.
Mm-hmm. So we have around 150,000 members.
Wow.
That's a significant number. We have 5 different discussion forums that they engage in, and we have them split off depending on their involvement in the association. We have 3 technical forums, so depending on their technical discipline, they're in a technical forum. Our entire membership is in a professional forum, if you will, and then we recently opened a forum just for younger members and students that started in January. So completely different forums and skill set, but we don't just have those forums. We also have committee groups. So we have 600 different committees, and each one of those committees has their own community space, if you will, that they load documents in and they start discussions. Some of them, post events. Obviously, not all 600 committees use those spaces. It's probably 20%. That's something that we're trying to grow and build, is more committees that are using those spaces. And then on top of that, we also have a mentoring program within our community, which I think, mentoring and community pair very well together. And I think having the mentoring program as part of our community platform has been essential in our community growth as well. So, quite a few different things that our community does within our organization. And I should say, it is, as far as opened or closed. So depending on different spaces, it's open or closed. We've really dealt a lot with, managing content and, what content do we keep behind a membership wall, which don't we? You've got to balance the member benefit of your community versus, the problem with your community being a member benefit is they actually have to think it's a member benefit.
Yep.
If there's nothing going on, it's not a benefit.
Yeah.
So it's one of those that's really been a fine line that we've had to walk, and it's something that we still talk about on a daily basis as far as how to set it up as far as being open or closed. But for the most part, to post in our community, you do have to be a member of our association.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something about there being committees who are able to meet within the online community. So it sounds like there's a little bit of volunteer management associated with that as well?
Yes. And I should say that those communities are all closed to committee members themselves. So with that, I don't so much. I do a little bit deal with some of our members and helping them load documents, or if they, have trouble accessing the site, things like that I actually deal with members. But for the most part, it's working with staff to make sure that their groups are set up how they need to be set up. So it's really just enabling staff and giving staff the tools. And sometimes our staff will find bugs within our system, or maybe they have trouble loading a document, or they'll come up with a use case and they'll say, hey, we want to start doing this. Is this something that we can do within the platform? So yeah, it's more trying to empower staff to help volunteers, but yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it. So yeah.
Okay. So do you find that you spend a good amount of time instilling in the staff that are responsible for managing those committees, instilling in them some level of community management skill set so that they're able to run those committees within the community platform effectively? And then how do you manage through that, being a team of one?
So yeah, that's a great question. As far as that goes, I wish that there was more community type activity going on in those spaces. A lot of times, what ends up happening is they're being used as communication vehicles and just a file repository. So most, I would say, the groups that are being used, it's pretty much just a library functionality within Higher Logic that's being used. But as time goes on, I'm seeing more discussions and more. We have a committee on sustainability that tries to start conversations in there about different things that are happening within sustainability, and trying to post to get conversations actually flowing and going. And yeah, there is a lot of coaching that goes on in that, because I mean, a lot of times you have to also understand how communication works within the platforms, as far as what emails people are receiving. Like, okay, if I post a document in the library, you're not sending out a notification. If you end up posting, a discussion, then they'll get it the next day. So like, you don't want to post something on Friday, because then that email goes out on Saturday. No one's going to see it. So I mean, there are all those things that we try to talk through with staff and make sure that they're aware of, and try to give them the skills that they can do to make those groups really thrive.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's a lot of value from that respect to the organization that you work for, that the online community provides. What other value does the online community provide for the association? I'm sure you've heard in the research, especially the research that comes out from the community roundtable, that shared value is the thing that's really kind of drives support and engagement from all levels of the organization within an online community. Talk to me a little bit about how your community does that for your organization.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different value adds that the community brings, and I actually had this conversation with someone within the organization other day about trying to figure out what our ROI was, and is that something we want to start calculating? And the answer I got, surprisingly, I'd be interested if anyone else on the call has any thoughts on this, was that there's so many different types of value adds that we can't just pick one metric to measure ROI. So again, like we said, we're talking about those different committee spaces, those discussion forums, mentoring, and then even this younger member portal that we have. It's really curated content. So we have our communications team goes through, and we provide member blogs twice a month, and then we also provide these resource pages that essentially, those get posted once a month. So this month, the resource page was called Land a Job in Excel. So, that has, our podcast on it. We do a webinar, or I guess not a webinar series, but like a video series on YouTube. So that was a content piece on there. So there are all these things that, if I'm just someone browsing content, it's all there for me, all in one space. So, I mean, there's so many different aspects of our community. It's like, how do you measure all of those as a value add? Because one person may be active in a committee space, but they don't want to look at the discussion forums, or they don't want to be involved in a mentoring relationship. So really, like, the value add cuts a lot of different needs within our membership. So it's really, how do you measure that?
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like, because the value stretches across different parts of not only the organization, but what member needs are, it sounds like you've done a really good job at your approach to the strategy for the online community and how you will continue to support different segments of members that participate there. So then that kind of asks the question: have you segmented your members, and in order to really understand what it is that they need, and then how to go about providing it to them?
We've definitely done a lot of that. I don't know if we've segmented in more of a formal manner, but definitely we relaunched the platform in January. And, one of the things with that is we were, very careful about getting feedback from members. I think the site was kind of, our community was launched kind of haphazardly. I mean, I wasn't here for it. I don't know for sure. But I think it was, from what I hear, it was like a quick launch date. Our marketing and communications teams weren't involved at that point. So there wasn't a whole lot of thinking about member experience. So before the relaunch, I spent, 5 months as far as interacting with committee members, meeting with the different staff as far as use cases for their committee groups was something that we actually did. So really getting a response back from committee members. And then before we launched our younger member forum, we actually sent out a survey attached with gift cards for people to take and let them look at one of the toolbox that we had established. And that was something too that I took some months before we launched that, and basically shared, well, not a month, I would say 2 weeks, shared the platform after it was up to get feedback from younger members. So we've definitely segmented and tried to survey. I mean, it's one of those things that I could sit here, at my desk and say, this is what members need. Or, even, my activity with Higher Logic or, within CMX, a community by association, what your community needs is not what my community needs. So, you really have to, it's not good enough for just to talk to other people in association or in community management, but really to talk to your members and see what their use case and what their needs are. So that's something I try to talk to members as often as possible. And it's also attending different events where your members are there and just watching them interact. I was blessed to be able to go to our leadership conference. We have 3 of them with the different regions within our association. And that was just a really helpful experience. And I tried to spend as much time as possible with members during those times, as far as, not sitting with staff during meals. I tried to sit at a table with all members, and then just trying to interact with people as much as possible. Because even, the conversations that they have over lunch, like they're talking about their needs and their wants and their desires and, what's of interest to them, like those are great opportunities to be able to understand your community. And I guess to answer your question, you segment to a certain extent as far as who's using what features, but we haven't done that in a formalized manner.
Yeah, and I think there's something super important that you just said in understanding member needs is that, you're able to sit and have conversations with them. And it's not always easy when you're on staff as part of an organization or association, because sometimes it makes members feel like they can't say what they want to say. And then other times, if you've got members who are super vocal and very passionate about the things that they need to see and that they need in order to be successful from your association, they'll tell you everything. So I think it's super important that you called out that, hey, when I'm at these events, I'm sitting with members and I'm listening to their conversations versus, I'm trying to pull information out of them, because I think you're going to hear some much more valuable information if you're just listening to those natural conversations. But in those situations where you're sitting down and talking to members, are you scheduling calls? Is this something that you do regularly? Tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's a super important point that we sometimes miss in this profession, is that sometimes a conversation is worth more than sending out a survey or posting a question in the discussion threads to try to gauge, how people are feeling. Sometimes just sitting down and having that conversation and listening to someone is the hugest benefit in the world. So talk to me a little bit about your approach to that.
So when I started initially, we had a few automation emails, but you generally end up getting responses from some of those emails that get generated through the system. And I started out just basically following up with those like on a personal level, and I'll try to pick maybe one or two things that I connect with personally with each member on those emails. So if they say, if I get an email back from, we're sending in the "we miss you" email, we turn those off because I think they're terrible.
Sometimes they are.
but I mean, a lot of times it's just the responses that you get back from those is, hey, my wife is sick and I haven't been able to do this, or hey, I'm out of work right now. And so anyways, with those kind of responses that I'd get back, I'd follow up with like very personal, asking about their personal situations and starting somehow an organic relationship. And relationships kind of build out of that. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but really just trying to, focus personally on the member themselves. Because I think community it's very much, it's definitely a group interaction, but it's one-to-one interaction, and it's a personal level, and it's not good enough to just be like, okay, post it in the forum and that's that. Sometimes there are ways that you should handle situations outside of that, and that happens where sometimes someone will post and I'll send a post back, with I shouldn't say commentary, but additional resources or things that might help them, and so that kind of starts relationships. We've developed a team of topic moderators, and I think I just added the 16th on that team. And that's something that really not just having people that feed questions, but really developing a relationship with those people to see what their needs are and then how that matches the community. So that was a very slow start because the community wasn't super active. So I had asked quite a few people that had posted if they wanted to do it, and there wasn't really a whole lot of value happening in the discussion forums. So I, before we launched, I only had a handful of people that were willing to do that. But was able to develop relationships with those people who were able to start conversations. Excuse me. To start conversations, and out of that came really an interest and people that wanted to get involved with this group. So so that really helps. Now we're doing a phone call, I think twice a month, with all the topic moderators, where they really can connect and talk about discussion ideas and really really get to know each other.
Awesome.
Sorry.
So no, it's fine. So does your community meet offline as well? And if so, how do you facilitate that?
So as far as meeting offline, we do have the topic moderators that are about to start meeting. I'm really sorry, I'm coming down with something.
Okay.
So anyways, we have that group that meets offline, but that's a very small closed group. We do have within our mentoring program quarterly phone calls. So those quarterly phone calls happen. We've had 2 of them so far. It's been interesting. I've asked one person to go ahead and share their experiences because it's a new program. Not experiences from the program itself, but from mentoring in previous organizations. And they've kind of shared like 10 minutes of what's worked for them, their successes, some of their challenges. And then other people on the phone call, which I think we had 10 on the first one and 5 on the second one. So not great, but excuse me. Not great, but definitely some interesting conversation and engagement.
Okay. Yeah, mentoring programs, from what I've seen across the community landscape, have been really kind of hard to get off the ground in online communities. I've seen it work in chapters, and even then, sometimes you really have to be kind of committed to the outcomes and what you're going to get out of it and what you're going to put into it as a mentor. So how long has your mentoring program been active for your community, and how did you go about standing it up, gauging interest, getting people to participate, those types of things?
So we launched the mentoring program in January, and it was one of those things that was there was a short deadline for it. It was something that we'd thought about in the summertime, and then we had an initiative for membership value where there were 9 different membership initiatives that we wanted launched on January 1st. So a super short time frame to learn the technical sides of getting that mentoring program together. But then also mentoring is, the program itself, like how often should they meet? How are they going to connect? There's just so many questions, and every mentoring program is different. And had started doing some research about what other organizations were doing in the summertime. And then really once we actually decided to start developing the program, ironically, there had been a conversation in our community about mentoring that had started. And there were, about 10 different people that had participated in that conversation. So I reached out to all of those people participating in the mentoring conversation and said, hey, look, we want to start a mentoring program. I would really appreciate your insights. So we started this mentoring cohort, if you will. And they shared documents that they had used in other mentoring programs. They had feedback. We did have phone calls with them. And then any of the documents that I developed, I ended up sharing with them, and they gave feedback and corrections and edits to all of those documents. So really, the mentoring program did come out of our membership as a whole, or not our membership, but that membership group that was very passionate about mentoring. So I think that's the benefit of communities within your organization is you're really able to engage your members and listen and provide a product that's valuable to them. I mean, obviously, like with every mentoring program, it's difficult. It's not easy. And, it's one of those things. I got an email, just before this call about, we send out automated emails, like a monthly check-in, just to see how people are doing. So this was a mentee that said, his mentor is introducing him to other people. He's, helping him find a job. He is attending our leadership conference, in the summertime. And so it's all these things and all these great things that he's really getting involved with our organization because of his mentor. So, I mean, there are pieces like that. And then I look at the analytics and I see that there's only, X amount of active relationships and so many people enrolled. And I'm like, but it's one of those things that it's just balancing. Like we have over 500 people have enrolled in our program. As far as like active profiles, I think there's 250 mentees around there and around 200 mentors. So I guess that's still 450, but we only have like 73 active relationships marked in our system. So, but it's one of those that then you're like, okay, should we start matching people? Should I start matching people up? But if people don't want to actually initiate a relationship themselves, they're really not going to make any type of effort in the relationship. So how valuable is that? So, I mean, we're kind of, trying to evaluate and see what I can do to improve and, engage people, but it's just, you got to lead the horse to water, but they still have to drink. So
that's right.
That's the thing about mentoring.
Yeah, mentoring is so individually motivated, right? At the onset, you hear about it, you're like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for all my life. And then you enroll and you're like, I don't really have time for that. So it's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people that all the time. It's like, and especially because we're doing ours through HireLogic, and there's a mentoring directory. It's like online dating.
Yeah.
Like it really is. You're like, this is a great idea. I'm gonna find a mentor, and we're gonna have great conversations, and he's gonna help me with this and like that. And then you like start looking, you're like, oh, he could be nice. Like, oh, he's got good experience. And then you're like, I don't feel like, getting dressed up and going on a date, on a date on Friday. Like, I don't have time for that.
Right.
So I mean, but I mean, the other thing is too, I think our mentoring program specifically is more about perceived value. And I think mentoring programs in general, it's a perceived value. The option is there if you need it, but yeah, it's really, you got to make the effort to do it, and no one has time for that.
Right. Exactly. Do you think it would be, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think it would be any different if your audience was different? So say instead of a group of civil engineers that were part of your online community, say it was I don't know, teachers or something like that. Do you think that would be any different, or do you just really think it's mentoring? It's just a product of the nature of what it is.
I think it's a product of what it is. I don't know. Um, so for us specifically, like civil engineers, they put a very high value on mentoring. So the fact that they're not even following through with it is, you know, if anyone were to get behind mentor, and they really have, like as far as enrollment, like when we sent like a enrollment email out to our, we sent it out to anyone over 35, and then I had a group of like younger member leaders that I had sent a personal invitation out to maybe 70 to 100 younger member leaders within our organization. So, I mean, we had enrollment off the bat with mentors was, you know, 100 people responded to that. Like the call for that has been good, and like the feedback has been really good. Because I mean, civil engineers, it is before you get your professional engineering license, you have to have, in most states, I believe it's 5 years of mentored experience. So like they have to have mentoring to get their license. Like this is something that's like, it is valuable to them. It's something that they find extremely important. So the fact that even within that field, it's not as successful as we'd like to be is a little disappointing. But the other thing is too, and I don't know how often, I mean, I think this is something that really needs to be considered within associations and within people talking about mentoring, is really generationally people engage differently.
Yep.
And it's really like, that's been one of the hardest struggles that we've seen is, you know, we have more, and one of the boundaries that we've tried to cut down within our program is not this older to younger interaction, but really based on topics of interest. So, you know, if I have 5 years of experience in, you know, writing or giving speeches, like that's something I can help someone with that maybe has more of a technical background. So like really more of like this partnership instead of this older to younger per diem is really something that we've tried to promote. But really within, you know, our mentors in our program, a lot of the people that have time to mentor are retired or more senior. And then you have these younger generation that, you know, they just want to email back and forth. Like that's all they want. And they're very transactional in how they deal with people. And what I hear a lot of is mentees that send their resume to their mentor. Mentor reviews the resume, has a few notes, and the mentor never hears back from the mentee.
Yeah. I just need you to look at this for me. Thanks.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's very transactional. And so we've tried to incorporate both the needs of both parties, because a lot of times like mentors want to actually like, you know, have a relationship, and they want to meet in person, and they want to, you know, do it. But I mean, really, even like from a personal experience, you know, someone who is 30, I don't want to go meet with someone in person. I don't have time to go have lunch with you. Like I would gladly have a phone call with you. Like I have, you know, mentors that I, you know, will call once a week. I'll have a phone call set up, or, you know, people within my office that I'll just drop by and talk to them occasionally. But like you know, no one has time for that.
Right. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. So, but yeah, but generally, as far as dealing with different generations, that's something that is really, I think, one of the biggest struggles in mentoring.
Okay. So to switch gears a little bit, talk to me about what has been your biggest challenge Since you've been in the community management space? What's that one thing that you're like, I will never forget the day?
Ooh. Uh, there's been a few things. I would just say, I would say one of the hardest things that that I've struggled with is the implementation of our platform, as far as not having a technical background. And you know, our community was launched before I was here, and there was no documentation provided. So having to go back and look, because our community is integrated with our AMS. So having to go back and look at the codes, and there have been things, and I still find things that are not integrated correctly, and it's something that I can't fix myself.
Oh
So
goodness.
having to work with with our IT department, which our IT department is great, but I mean it's still hard to inherit a community that you don't know how it was set up, and it's already integrated. And the other thing is too, with the integration, is there are certain things that the business strategy wasn't involved in the integration. Maybe there could have been a little bit more foresight about what data was being captured and what data we were using and sending back and forth. And that's just something. And maybe it was, and our business strategy has changed. Who knows? But that's something that in dealing with integration, integration is definitely the hardest struggle, I think.
Yeah, it's always the hardest struggle because, you never know, what's going to connect to what kind of data you're going to get out of it. It's never easy, never easy at all.
Yeah, but it's so important though.
It
Like, it's one
is.
of those things that you have to really pay attention to the details and see how things are working. But it's a struggle.
It is. So on the flip side of that, what has been your biggest success? What's the thing you're most proud of since being a community manager?
Um, you could say, as a community manager, getting those emails about, hey, I asked this question in this thread, and somebody offered me a job. Um, you know, People following up and say, hey, like, this is what happened with this conversation, or this, following through, or this, you know, mentee today that emailed me about the impact that his mentor is having on his life. Things like that, I think, are just daily success stories of, really helping you empower people. And our new vision statement. I don't know if it's our vision or mission, or something within our strategic plan, is make you matter more. And that's really what we want to do as an organization, is to make our members matter more to the profession and then to the world as a whole. So really giving them the skills through online community to help them be successful is really just every day. It's a success. So I mean, as long as your community keeps doing things like that and you keep hearing stories, and again, it's looking at ROI and how many people are really impacted like that. But I mean, really, if you can make that much of a difference in someone's life to a handful of people, I think you're on a good track. And I think communities do really make a significant impact on people's lives, and not even from them participating, but even being able to read and feel like they're part of something bigger is something like, they don't actually have to engage in the community to receive benefits from it. So, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing like seeing your community members kind of blossom as they participate within your online community because of the conversations, the connections, the resources that they have that are enabled by your online community. It's something really great to see. So after that question, how do you continue to thrive as a new-ish community manager? You've been doing this for a little bit of time now, so how do you continue to stay fresh? How do you continue to grow your skills? How do you continue to make sure you're making some good connections so that you continue to do a good job as a community manager?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that I've only been doing this for a little bit of time and have a lot to learn. But it's one of those where it's staying current and being aware of other things going on. for instance, like the community roundtable research, I should say report, not research, but the report that came out last week, I was on that webinar. Higher Logic continuously has webinars that I participate in. I also really enjoy CMX and participating in those webinars and connecting with those community managers. So it's really just trying to stay current as far as what other communities are doing and learning from other people and their mistakes. So there's 3 or 4 different forums for community managers that I participate in that I try to be aware of conversations going on, and I try to ask dumb questions. If anyone's read any of my posts on Hug, I'm sure that they know that there's quite a few really dumb questions. It's like, oh, I should have known that. But you know, a lot of times, like you got to ask those dumb questions, or you miss something, and that's how you learn. And you know,
Yeah, and you know, your dumb question might be someone's. You know what? I was thinking the exact same thing. So no questions ever dumb.
No, and that happens all the time. I was telling my sister that the other day. I'm like, and even some of our members, I'll tell them that. I'm like, if you've had that question, someone else has had that question, just share it. I mean, really, I think we're at the point. Don't take yourself too seriously. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if you don't know, ask the question. It's fine. Like, no one's going to be like, how dare you? Just ask the question.
Yes.
So then my last question for you today before we start to wrap up is if you could give one piece of advice to a new community manager who's just starting their journey, what would it be?
Participate in community. I definitely would urge them to be involved in different groups for community managers and know about the resources that are out there. There's so much different resources and research and just conversations and just meeting and networking with other people is the best thing you can do. I mean, the only way you can learn about community is by participating in it. So yeah, that's really the best advice I have.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're a community manager and you're not participating in community, what are you even doing, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, we really appreciate the time that you took to talk to us today, Tirza. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day to share. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you today. For those listening in, the recording for this video will be up shortly within the Community by Association Network. Thank you again, Tirza, for being a part of this, and we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks.